Hi everyone, in today's episode of Business Berserkers with Gary McKendrick, that's me, we have the stressed guru himself, Dave Algeo.
Hello.
Welcome on board, Dave. Thanks for coming in.
Good to see you.
Appreciate your time.
No worries.
So, I'm like the ginger Michael Parkinson. You have the B at the match and the orange notepad to match as well. I want to talk a little bit about stress. We've all got it. Have to deal with it. Does it have to cripple us?
The answer in a word is no. You know, that's it. Interview over, isn't it?
Interview over. Drop mic.
Here we go. No. The answer is no. Obviously, it's different for individuals. It's different for different people, depending on circumstances, their experiences, their makeup, personality, and what have you, as to how it might affect you, and knowledge as well. Because a lot of overcoming the problems with stress, I guess, is it's about understanding and knowing and knowledge and tools and tactics that you can pick up that work for you, and a willingness to try, you know, and try and fail, I guess, as well with things, because it needn't be destructive, although for many of us it has been in the past. But you couldn't come through the other side, and that's the part of it. For me, I mean, I call myself the stressed guru. It's because I'm not trying to say now that I do the workshops and the coaching and that kind of thing that I'm perfect and I've got this 6-step plan. It's because I'm still a human being. I'm still making those mistakes now, but I'm a lot more informed and I'm a lot more aware to catch myself when I fall into some of the older bad habits that I used to have. And you start to think, oh, hang on a minute, what you've just put up on the board, that's me. And actually, I can maybe shift and change that. The way I'm thinking isn't necessarily right. It's not telling me the truth and all those kinds of things. Suddenly the penny starts to fall and you start to think, I can do something. So then it starts to take that time. Yeah. And I remember thinking, and this is where kind of, I suppose we'll talk about it later, but coming on to the man sprouts, the male mental health, that was the moment, sitting in that training course, where I had this kind of awareness where I thought, blokes need this stuff. Yeah.
So was that a course that you're at the place your employer said you had to go on, or did you choose to do it?
I applied to become a trainer because I'd always I enjoyed teaching and teaching new probationers and things like that, and I was a sergeant, so I was running a team and what have you, and I loved the development side. And it was a 6-week course where basically you take you away from your force area and your residential, take your top of your head off, take your brain out, screw it up, put it back in type thing, and it's like mind blowing. And that was the moment where you kind of just think, wow, why am I just hearing this now? I'm in my early 30s here. Why am I just finding this out now? Where have you been?
For me, 33 was my moment where I thought, no, something has to change here.
Yeah.
So the moments were then you Thomas, your little one at 4, saying, "Daddy's grumpy again," and then your mind being opened up to a new way of thinking and doing by this course that you were on.
Yeah, I think it's funny because you kind of say that, and I've just kind of realised that there's two sides to that. There's the emotional bit, like that, the wake up call from the emotional bit of your family thinking, my God, yes, how much of my life am I spending it in a complete miserable mood or intoxicated? And then they have the knowledge that came in. Now, if the knowledge had come before, I might have said, what's this bollocks that they're talking about? It's just rubbish, this crap, you know, that kind of stuff. But it hit me after, and it was just probably that combination that worked just right for me to start shifting the tanker that is Dave Algeo going in one direction, oblivion, you know, to something a lot more positive.
You do a wonderful thing with cabbages.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about that.
Do you know, it's a funny thing because it started out as I will get to explain it because it's kind of what's cabbages all about? What's it got to do with stress? When I was kind of starting to realise that this is what I wanted to talk about, stress. Not so much, I talk about stress, but actually it's not about stress for me. Stress is the thing that gets in the way. It's that catch-all term, we can talk about what it is in a moment, but it's a catch-all term for the things that distract you, consume you, divert you from where you want to be, who you want to be, how you want to feel, and the life you want to live. And that's why I'm fascinated by it, fascinated with why we get locked into feeling overwhelmed, overload, believing the thoughts in your head, all of that. So this word stress covers a lot of things. So I remember reading and doing a lot of research around it when I was, you know, starting to think, as my business tanked the first time, I need to maybe niche down and specialise. And I was feeling a lot of stress at the time. I started reading research, and there was when I was reading about the stress response and how the cumulative effect, you know, how you get weighed down by lots of different things. This image of, and it depends on how old some of the viewers are out there, this image of Cracker Jack came into my head. And this is a kids program that was on the telly about a couple of years ago.
Yeah, maybe in the 80s.
All right, a lot longer than that. But yeah, on that program there was a game called Cabbages and Kings. And they used to get a few kids up, standing on the stage, and they'd be wanting prizes, so they get asked questions. If they've got a question right, they get a prize, like proper prize, like a fire engine, not a Nintendo DX or something, you know, something like that. Proper prize.
Tonka truck.
Aye, or a doll, or an action man, or something like that. So they get those things, but if you got a question wrong, they get a cabbage. And if you drop something, you get a cabbage. And if you got 3 cabbages, you were off. So you gradually see 4 or 5 kids whittle down to the one kid at the end who's holding this massive pile of stuff, desperately trying not to drop anything because they want to win the prizes, you know. And they get a Cracker Jack pencil as well. And that image kind of thought, that's it. That's an image to illustrate how it's the mix of the good stuff, the good demands in life, the things you want to achieve, the family life, the holidays plan and all those things, and the not so good, the cabbages. It's the cumulative effect, because you can never really separate work from home. Can you? You know, you kind of, why can't I leave home at home and work at work? Well, there are techniques to help you, but it's challenging. And it's because your primitive fight or flight brain doesn't see it that way. So you've got this cumulative pile. And I remember doing a little breakout session in a conference at, a good few years ago, thanks to a friend of mine, Nikki Gott, who was one of my mentors at the time from She's Got It.
Yeah. I've heard her speak, actually.
Yeah.
Really good story.
Oh, yeah. And I tried this out. Got somebody out, and we talked about cabbages and had this, and it was a hit. And it took me a while, because I used it in sessions afterwards, but it took me a while to actually that I can do more with this. So then I started to use it. Right, so how do we deal with the cabbages? Well, we chunk the cabbages into sprouts. And then I started bringing in other vegetables like the radish. You've got a little inner radish that needs to be nurtured, self-care, that kind of thing. And it's caught on. You know, so much so I've kind of had a few interviews and been on telly with Davina McCall, which was lovely. But it was kind of like, from this one little thing, when you read a book, you think, wow, a little creative idea like that.
One idea led to being on telly with Davina McCall. I heard you drop that name in there.
Aye.
Very good. So the analogy is then, if you just describe that a bit more.
Well, the analogy is that you can, in life, you've got a lot of positives that you enjoy and appreciate. You know, the cuddly toys represent that, the positives. You know, having holidays, having quality time with friends, family, loved ones, having a home and that kind of thing, you know, the positives. But over time, you'll have the cabbages of the negative pressures, like workload, like deadlines, like having to care for an elderly relative who's starting to feel ill, and you're worried about them, as well as the practical things of then how do you manage the time there compared to time with your family and that kind of thing. It could be traffic, and it could be little things like not getting a parking space or something like that. So that mound piles up, and what happens is the cuddly toys, the good stuff, gets crushed, doesn't it, really?
Yeah. So I've got a pile of all the good stuff that I want, and then it's all the bad stuff is replacing it, and the good stuff starts dropping
leaking out
of your hands, and then all you're left with is the bad stuff, which is
the metaphor for what we do in life. We kind of say, I'll do the good stuff later. When? I'll get to that later. But when does later come? And then you're left in this mindset of, my life's just full of cabbages, and how do I cope with them? And then you start to not see them as one cabbage here, one cabbage there. You start to see it I'm just coping, I just need to get through. And that's where we lose perspective on how do I deal with this one problem here and this problem here. Because when we deal in problem-solving mode on one thing, we can be more effective. But when we're just in this hanging on for dear life mode like that, then your focus is gone, your ability to make decisions, to be clear, to see the bigger picture and get priorities right is the big challenge. So part of the solutions then are to step away, get yourself a focus on the cabbages, identify them, chunk them down, and look at yourself.
Chunk them into little sprouts and deal with them. Yeah. Have you seen that film, The Martian, with Matt Damon in?
I have.
It's brilliant. At the end, he says, space is just a series of overcoming challenges, one challenge after another, which eventually leads you to home. And I thought, life is like that. Life is just a series of challenges. You overcome one, solve the next problem, solve the next problem, solve the next problem, and eventually that leads you to where you want to be. And I thought that was a beautiful analogy. I even wrote a blog about it, GaryMcKendrick.com. Check it out.
Nice one.
And it's good, that one. And life is problems, isn't it? And you just have to overcome the problems. But you can have good problems and bad problems, can't you?
And this is the thing, because there's a lot of debate about what language we use, and I'm kind of starting to shift to, because you're right, we have problems or do we have challenges, and it's how you frame it, I guess. But I sometimes think that, particularly as a bloke now in his 40s, who's gone through this journey, like most of us, to be fair, where you get a warped sense of what life's about and what it means to be successful, and all of those things. You get a warped sense, and those problems or challenges, you could view them as just another punch or a kick in the stots or whatever. You could use it as it's just another thing to bring it down.
Stots. I've heard that for a while.
It's a good burn up phrase, that, like,
kick in the stots. Life's gonna kick you in the stots.
Yeah, son. But it's kind of like, if you view them as actually they're the challenges that the opportunity to give you the wake-up call. Because when I look back, it's like, I can't remember who said it, but when you're going through things, you don't join the dots. It's only when you look back that you can see, actually, there's a story there and it makes sense. And I kind of remind myself now when I'm hitting something that's a bit of a challenge. But I think through life, you hit these challenges and problems, and it's an opportunity to go, hang on a minute, what is the lesson I need to be learning here? What is it? What's the wake-up call? Because I'm obviously missing something.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's telling you that something isn't working, isn't it?
Yeah. Or either you're thinking and approaching it the wrong way, or you're falling into some old habits, or just something environmentally is not right for you, or whatever, whether you're in the wrong job or what have you, And I think that, and for me, the overall journey is like sort of almost developing this persona, realizing it's not for you, and then dismantling that to then discover the new one. And then you get the setbacks, a bit like the Martian, where they're out in space, he has progress, then he gets a real massive knockback. Then just as they're trying to get out off the planet, there's another setback. It's not that it's a smooth ride the minute you discover yourself and all that.
You touched on the Inner Radish. Tell me a bit more about that, because is that meditation, things like that, which I'm heavily into?
Yeah, well, it's a bunch of things, really. A bunch of radish. But the point of it is that the thing that often goes out the window when we're under stress and pressure, in order to cope, in order to get through, is we forget about ourselves and taking care of the things that matter. And that can be relationships and quality time with people, but it's also about ourselves. And many of us, my experience, and this is men and women, we're prone to putting ourselves out for everybody else and just forgetting that. So the inner radish is, I kind of use the metaphor of the radish because not everybody likes them. Some people love it, some people hate it. And I kind of use the thing that whatever happens, this radish is trying to be the best damn radish it can be. There's always somebody going to hate it. Do you know what I mean? So it's why do we try so hard to be pleasing, to be all things to everybody, when really you're always going to get your critics, aren't you? You're always going to get somebody knock you back. Be less worried about that and come back and spend some quality time on yourself. So I talk about 6 areas really, which forms the mnemonic of radish, in terms of self-care, which is, look, recharge your batteries, your physical, emotional and psychological batteries. You have a reserve of coping, and if you are battered all of the time, your tanks are going to be low or empty, and you're not going to function as well or at all if they're totally empty. You need to recharge them, and that's through rest, relaxation, sleep, and also practices like mindfulness. Now, you'll know, obviously, mindfulness and meditation, they're not relaxing in themselves because it takes a bit of discipline. But one of the fallout benefits can be that it can help you settle in more and relax and tune in a bit more when you need to.
Yeah, it's a skill to practice, isn't it? It can often feel like a bit of an inconvenience. I haven't got time, but that's just nonsense. You make the time for something that you know is going to benefit you. So, rest. Recharge.
So, recharge the batteries. Then the A is appreciation. And for me, it's about saying, look, you might have your challenges and things may not be going ideally. And yes, you have to get real about that. You have to get to acknowledge that if life isn't going great, let's do what we can to deal with it. But appreciation is to recognise that there's more going right than wrong. More work, and you've got a lot more going for you. But we are out of the habit. I think a lot of us are conditioned not to be natural. In order to change that, little practices like gratitude journals, I don't know if anybody's kind of talked this in previous interviews, but there's a lot of science that supports that a daily practice of tuning. I liked what you said in when we talked last time, is bookend your day with it. Where you bookend, where you start your day with 3 gratitude things, end it. And that starting the day is actually priming yourself to look for it through the day. So as you get more practiced, you start to spot it during the day.
Yeah.
And also you start to catch other people doing things right.
Yeah, you do. D?
D is about date time, and I talk about dates again, fruit and veg, you know, but dates is about, it's about quality time with others.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people beat themselves up is, I haven't got enough time with the kids or the family. And actually, it's not about quantity. It's about quality. I know your kind of rule with the phone, not having the phone on and things like that. And that's something, because how often is it you sit down with your partner and you're kind of watching Hollyoaks or whatever? Hollyoaks.
Yeah, you get your phone out.
And you're on this, you know, and you're having a conversation like this, you know. Yeah. Yeah. That's one of those old phones though, isn't it?
Nah,
it's
it's pretty old. That was from the 80s.
Yeah.
It's a boomerang as well. So dates. Someone said to me once, treat your wife and your kids like you would a client. You wouldn't let them down. I thought that was a good way to, to describe
that
it.
is a brilliant way of looking at it, I guess, for a lot of people we work with.
You wouldn't be late. Yeah. You wouldn't cancel at the last minute.
Yeah.
You'd be there. You'd put the effort in, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't sit with a client messing about on your phone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a great way of thinking about it.
That
would resonate. Thank you. I will use that one. I'll give you credit. I'll give you credit. But date time isn't just about with others. It's about with yourself. Because one of the things we don't often give ourselves, particularly because of devices, everything being so accessible, is just breathing space. Yeah. And you're talking about a minute here, 2 minutes there, 10, 20 minutes over a break, lunch break, 10 minutes meditation, 20 minutes meditation, or just a walk. But me time on your agenda, not anybody else's. You're not trying to tick off something on a to-do list. You're not doing something for somebody else. You're not feeling like you're trying to achieve anything. You're just doing it because it suits you. It's just for you. And I often say, why not think back to when you were a teenager? You know, what did you do then that was totally pointless, but you loved it? And for me, it was lying in the dark, listening to Pink Floyd Shine on You Crazy Diamond, you know?
Good choice.
Just mint.
Good choice.
Yeah? Whatever the music is, but that would feel guilt, you know, we feel like indulgent and guilty now, and like, what's that achieving? And I've got so much to do. And actually, for those who need to frame it in a result outcome, it isn't that you're ticking off a to-do list item. You are actually making yourself more able to focus, to be productive, to be attentive and present in communications, and just you are recharging your tank so that you've got more energy for life. So there's many micro breaks along with a good night's sleep, which, you know, can be challenging as well. There's lots of research around that. Yeah. That really helps. So it's dates with others and dates with yourself.
Right. Recharge, appreciate, dates date time with yourself and dates with others.
And I is about injecting some inspiration into your day. And I talk about this because we're not dogs. You know how a dog, I don't know if you've got a dog, I've got a little water terrier.
No, I'm not a dog person.
Right,
I've got a fish.
I'm
two kids.
I'm not sure if it's the same with fish, but anyway, dogs can go from misery to joy, can't they, like that? Just like that. They're kind of, 1 minute, they're like wagging the tail, the next minute you're telling them off, and they're like, oh, and then the next minute, give them a cut up their back. And we kind of expect, in a way, ourselves to be that agile as human beings. And we say, pull yourself together, give yourself give your head a shake, all that kind of stuff. And actually, we're not like dogs. I know there's an advert of be more dog. And yeah, the principle is just let yourself go a bit and be more in the moment, and that's great. But actually, when it comes down to it, when something's on your mind, when you feel like you've had been knocked on your backside, it takes a little bit more. And that's where the inject inspiration comes in, because that's where you can bring in the big guns. The things like, you know, your mood's low, you stick on your favourite film, or you put on that piece of music that just makes you go, yes, love this. Or you read a poem or a prayer, or you speak to somebody that shifts you. It's the inspiration coming from outside that is a catalyst for you to go from that place where you're just struggling to, come on, I'm back at it now, yes, that kind of thing. Because we can't necessarily just slap ourselves around the head and be able to do that, you know, but we can do it with those things.
So, Radish,
yes,
we're
so
on the S now.
The S is about, it's for sweat, it's for movement, activity. It's about exercise, but, so it is about exercise. And one of the things I'm kind of picking up is you're 6 days a week doing something every day. I'm kind of working, I'm building up to that now, and I'm kind of there now for 6 day a week activity. So there is the activity that gets you hard going, that builds your strength and your flexibility and all of that kind of stuff. But it's more than that, because there's a lot of research coming out of the Move Lab, say at Newcastle Uni, and other places that are talking about our sitting down too long, our being too static and not moving enough. And it's not just sitting, it's just the fact that we are too static. And it's the use it or lose it. And it's just encouraging people to find different ways to move more and move more often. Yeah. And I talk about fun and frequent. You're more likely to do something if you enjoy it, and you're more likely to sustain it if you enjoy it. So it's not doing something because I feel as if I have to go to the gym again, and oh my God. If you hate it, you're not going to keep it up. No.
But you touched on it's actually getting your heart rate up and getting a sweat on, because just buying a Fitbit, I love Fitbits, got one Fitbit Ionic. It's not just about buying a Fitbit and just and frantically pacing up and down the living room before you go to bed because you need to get your 10,000 steps in or whatever, because that really isn't going to get your heart rate up. So it's not really going to do you much good. Better than sitting, of course, but you've got to find an exercise that actually you do enjoy doing or can see the benefit of doing, and you get a sweat on, your heart gets pumping and you've got a sweat on.
And it's both. It's recognising that if you just say did half an hour a day, that's great, but it's the incidental movements throughout your day, and if you can increase that, that has a massive effect. So one of the things, because I realised when I left the police, I've been running my business alongside working in the police, which in itself was a challenge, but my last few years were working in a custody suite where I was on my feet all the time, 4 12-hour shifts, and it wasn't long after I left, that was in 2014, that I realised the pounds were starting to pile on, and then Rosie came along, so the dad, you know, that kind of tiredness and just slipping into bad habits and what have you. I realised that I was not standing and moving anywhere near as much. Even though I was doing workshops and what have you, I just wasn't standing and moving anywhere near as I was when I was in the custody suite. So I started to introduce things like the standing desk, which is adjustable up and down, and I've even dismantled an old treadmill. Please get professional advice. I'm not an expert on dismantling treadmills and electric stuff, but I dismantled the sides and put it up, and I kind of walk on it, and it's amazing how much you can do while you're walking and working. So I have the desk up here. It's it's very slow pace because I can't, if you can forget you're walking, it's fine, but it does work actually. It's really good. So so it's sweat, it's move more, get your heart rate going, and look at what incidental movement you can have throughout your day. I guess moving on to the last part of the radish, the H, is capping it all off, is realising that the H is to have fun, because the problem with back when little Thomas, when he was little, was saying,
it's have fun.
Have some fun. Have some fun. But I realised, that little lad, he's only ever seen me when I'm miserable or serious or whatever. But at that time, I'd forgotten that life can be fun and is fun and is an adventure. I was taking it all too seriously. And we need to counter that mindset. There's a lot of research that shows that laughter and having fun is really good for you in terms of combating stress and anti-aging and what have you. But aside from that, it's also just about enjoying life. If I grind through it in a state of perpetual misery, it's going to be awful. And it was for a long time. Whereas now, that idea of just having fun and talking about cabbages and radishes and a bit of, like the laughs and what have you, look for opportunities, that's great.
In life, shit happens, doesn't it? A big slap is going to come round, and we mentioned Crackerjack. Let's talk about another old school TV show, Kenny Everett.
Oh yes.
Remember you had the big
Kenny
hands?
Everett. Brotherly.
Yeah. So then imagine a big Kenny Everett hand goes just when you least expect it. Yeah. And shit happens, and you touched on it yourself. Your father's just passed away. Only a matter of days ago,
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, yeah. Which was out of the blue, and I guess this ties a little bit into my journey in the sense that I didn't have a relationship as such with my dad because he'd moved away, and I guess he was a little bit of the part of those as a child, or a bit of the contribution to me becoming that perfectionist and anxiety. He's also helped shape who I am now, so there's no complaints in that sense. But the shock also came along with this feeling of what a waste, because he I felt was intelligent, creative, passionate man, but chose, for whatever reason, whether he was beaten down that one too many times, whatever, to retreat into, give in to that fear and that what have you, and hide behind silence and alcohol. And he was a drinker, and that no doubt have contributed to his passing away. And again, that tanker that I think about that I turned, could that have been me? And the thing that struck me as well as what is the waste, and this is something which has kind of made me review what I'm doing now and what have you, is he gave up, I think. you gave up on that fight, that fully utilised now, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want to set the example for any of my kids, for my family, for anybody. And if that means I make a tit of myself, it means I end up on my backside financially or whatever again, so what? I've picked myself up a few times. You know, I've had to run down to Northern Rock in Chesley Street before it closed with £2 to stop my house getting repossessed. I found that down the back of the couch. You know, I've done that, and you get through, you survive, battered and bruised, but stronger with it. And it reminded me of the Dylan Thomas poem, the "Do not go gently into that good night." I don't know if you know the poem.
Don't know the poem.
But that's the first line. Do not go gently into that good night, and then there's a line. And then rage, rage against the dying of the light. And it's for me, it's about. It's a powerful one. It's about, you know, when you meet that time when you're about to pass. And the thing that struck me is, fight every moment, but why wait until the dying of the light? What about now? You know, the light's still out there. Let's have the adventure now. Let's have the fun, the laughter. Let's make some impact and have some meaning and help other people. And this is what I'm trying to kind of make sure I do now is, rather than think about service, think of success, think about service and what I can do to help other people. Because I don't want other people to live and end up that way, the way that I could have ended up. You know, and to understand there's a lot of joy in this.
Dave, is it stress or is it pressure? What's the difference?
That hits the nail on the head with the problem with the word stress. Because what is stress? It means different things to different people. And this is the first thing I usually address when working with people is, don't think stress response. Because the problem with the word stress is it can be like, oh man, I'm stressed out, me, like I can't deal with this. Or, you know, what does it actually mean? And the thing is, pressure, if you think about pressure is the stimulus, it's the thing. So if I imagine, just pretend this is an iron bar. Now, if I start adding pressure, that bar is going to feel a sense of stress or strain. That's where the term eventually come from, as engineering, you know, in its original terms.
Getting technical.
Yeah.
Engineering.
So that pressure is the thing that's applied. So that pressure could be a deadline, it could be self-inflicted, like you're just useless, what you're wasting your time, that kind of thing. But that pressure is what leads to the experience or the response, the stress response. Because it's in effect fight or flight, you know, it's evolved from that, oh my God, there's saber-toothed tiger, got to react, do that or run away, you know. So it's that kind of mechanism is the response to the pressure. That's the problem with the word stress, because we use it in so many different contexts. The stress response activates and then leads to things like fight or flight, or, you know, those feelings of anxiousness, or what, you know, the positive or the negative, I guess, you know, in terms of that.
So pressure versus stress, what's the difference?
That's the pressure is the thing that's applied.
Right.
So if you were suddenly running late, or somebody came in and started saying, "How, what you doing in here? Get out!" That would be the pressure, the stimulus.
Or the person or the thing.
Yeah. Or the thing you're doing in here, the voice.
Right, or the inner critic.
Yeah. The stress is the stress response. It's your response to it.
Right. I get it.
You see what I mean? So it's a physiological response of the adrenaline releasing and heart rate going faster, but it's also the emotional and psychological response, the thoughts that happen as a result.
So life, business can throw pressures at us.
Yeah.
We therefore choose how to respond.
Yeah.
Which negates how stressed we get.
Yeah.
Negate, is that the right word?
Well, yeah,
I'm using it, I'm owning it.
You can do, because effectively that's where the challenge is, because how we respond is that response a result in something positive or result in something negative? And is the response, stress response itself, are we interpreting it as something positive or negative? Because there's some interesting research around that, you know, is stress a negative or a positive? We all need some stimulus, some pressure, some challenge. And actually, if we frame some of the things, you know, something you're terrified or you hate, oh God, that's really stressful. There's some interesting research around that if we change our vocabulary around it to, that's a challenge, that's exciting, actually, I'm up for this, that we can shift that sense of anxiety from negative to positive as well.
Running a business, it's hard work, isn't it?
Oh,
I naively thought it would be easy. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And you know, a couple of years ago it was kind of on its knees, but I fixed it, and that was kind of stressful. So as business owners, you know, I applaud anyone who, you know, leaves the world of employment, the safe world, and pushes themselves out there to do something, get over the fear of failure and actually start doing it. But is there any strategies that you think would work well for a business owner or a startup?
Are you talking about in terms of managing yourself through this process?
And like you have the fear of failure and that inner voice that you may be listening to a bit too much, and you think that everyone's going to laugh at you because you want to open up a cat cafe or a dog cafe, which I'm not saying that's the best business proposal.
No, you never know.
That was a random example that popped in my head.
Somebody's going to patent that now.
I know.
Yeah. But yeah, I think there is, because I think the thing about business, I think you're right. It's you know, you can carry a lot of these things, you know, from childhood and anxieties and what have you, and you think you get sorted and what have you. Going into business is one of those areas. One's challenge in life that can completely then expose those again and say, you haven't got it quite sorted, have you? You are that failure, you're not worth it, and that inner critic gets louder and louder. Yeah. And it's recognising that it's not that you are, it's that it's another chance to learn a lesson. It's telling you that you've still got a bit of work to do. And the thing with the inner critic is, I don't know about you, but I mean, it has resurfaced many times in my business life as much as anything, where you just think, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. Who are you to think you are? And even making the decision to do something, you question and criticise yourself. Yeah. And the inner critic, it's the thing that I always come back to, tackling it. I suppose I use some of the analogies from my police days. Is one thing is to remember that your thoughts and your feelings are not you. And that might say, well, hang on a minute.
What does that mean?
Yeah. They are things that you do. They are part of you, but they don't make up you. And the challenge is that we identify ourselves with a certain thinking. I'm an anxious, miserable this, or I'm just sick of feeling this way, and I'm just, you know, that kind of thing. You start to identify and believe that you are that person. They are just things that you do, thinking and feeling. And to remember that they don't tell you the truth quite a lot of the time, to be fair. Let's be right. Sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't. And that's where I find it really useful to come back to thinking. For me, I like to think in metaphors, whether it's cabbages, vegetables, whatever, but it's about saying, right, hang on a minute, inner critic, right, I'm going to put you in the witness box and I'm going to cross-examine you. And that sounds a bit silly, but it's about saying, hang on a minute, you've given an account here, I'm useless, I'm this, I'm that, right, what about when? What about on the night of? You know, that kind of tongue-in-cheek way, but I'm challenging it because I'm saying to that inner voice, you don't always tell me the truth. I'm challenging you here. And it's about remembering, and I often say this to myself, guilt is a feeling, it's not a verdict. I don't go to prison because of it. You know, just because I feel guilty doesn't mean I am. Just because I feel a certain thing doesn't define who I am. I'm not defined by my feelings, my thoughts, my cock-ups, or even my successes, I guess. It's a combination of all of those things. And it's reminding yourself of those things. So I kind of like to do that. I kind of say, right, put it in the witness box, challenge it, and remind yourself of the times when it's not true, and find a way to slap it down, basically. Yeah. You know, and distinguish between when it's telling you something that's, you know, don't do this because you're going to burn yourself, put your hand on the fire, but to recognise that much of the time it's trying to keep you safe. Yeah. But it's best intentions, just not the best effect.
Put yourself in the witness box. I like that. Challenge
Cross-examine
yourself. Cross-examine yourself.
Come up with a different verdict. Not guilty, Your Honour.
That.
Not guilty.
Good. Yeah. Not guilty, Your Honour.
Yeah. Not useless. Not useless, not a failure, not a waste of space. Worth it, you are worth. You know, all those things that kind of... Yeah.
So the modern man, the modern entrepreneur, businessman, we've touched on it earlier about the how do we get this balance of being the best husband, father, partner, then the best businessman, the best, most healthy version of us. That's quite a lot of pressure, isn't it, to get it right?
It is, and I think because being in business yourself as well is it brings its own, because you've got to learn, there's skills development, there's soft skills, there's all sorts of things, and the pressure to achieve all of those things, and it takes time, it's consuming, isn't it? Particularly if you love what you do and you're passionate about it. And I think the word balance is maybe one of the problems, is this idea, because I always get the impression with balance is that it's a bit of a tightrope. I've got to walk this tightrope like this, you know, and if I'm off, I'm off. And actually, it's less of that. I wonder if it's more like a graphic equalizer. You know, you've got it going up and down in the areas of your life. If it hits the red, then you need to just turn that knob down, bring it down a bit. And some will drop a bit, some will, and you're not looking for perfect line, you're looking for, I'll spend a bit of time here and, it's gone lower here, and being a bit more forgiving of yourself,
Yeah.
And when you have time with something, make sure it's quality time rather than, you're on the phone with and distracted whilst you're with your kids.
So it's undivided, focused attention to that person or that thing you're doing.
Yeah. Easier said than done, but
it is,
you'd need less of it then if it's quality time rather than quantity.
It's a skill though, you practice, isn't it?
Yeah, it does take
I like the analogy of the hobs on your oven.
Yeah.
4 hobs: work, health, family, friends.
Yeah.
And you can only ever have 2 hobs turned up at once, and the other 2 have to be turned down.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like that.
You need to sort of adjust the balance to give the others your attention, because if you have them all burning on full pelt, that's just burnout. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, because the person that's suffering is then you.
Yeah.
In that mix.
And then everyone else around you.
Yeah. That's a good one, because I think it takes away this idea that you have to be perfect or the best at, and the rigidity of all of that, because life isn't like that. It's that navigation, isn't it? It's kind of knowing that you're going to be off here sometime, drift. How do you navigate still on course, but know that a lot of time you're off here and you're correct, and So I think it's a challenge. It's, I guess, knowing what you want in each of those areas. What not what perfection is, but what is your ideal as a human being in that. I'd like to spend some quality time with my family every week, and this, that, and the other. And I want to be out of the holidays. I want my business to be this and within these limits. And I would like to be able to see my friends and this, that, and the other, and my health to be, and those kinds of things, and recognise that it's a longer game.
Yeah.
I kind of
delayed gratification.
Yeah. I like the phrase of healthier than yesterday as a bit of a mantra for me. In that it's not about healthy and fit, perfect tomorrow. It's about the incremental small changes you can do, so that for me, because I've got a little 2-year-old Rosie, I'm going to be 66 when she's 21, and I want to be as fit, if not fitter, than I am now for that.
Yeah.
And that means I've got plenty of time, but it also means I don't dilly-dally. It just means small incremental steps up. And that way it takes off that pressure to think, every minute of every day has to be perfect, because then I start to forget about time with this person, or I'm bad-tempered here, or I'm not focused on that. And if you do that in any area of your business, in a very short-termist way, you start to lose that. And don't get me wrong, you have emergencies to deal with. Fair dues. You get the fire extinguisher, you put the fire out. But have a longer-term view of that gradual incremental improvements, and you get there.
Compound effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Little things you can do every day to make your life better in the long run.
Sprout by sprout.
Sprout by sprout. I like it. So if anyone wants more information about your radish or your sprouts or your cabbages, where should we go?
Well, apart from visiting a good grocer's, the 2 things that I'm focusing on now are the Weekly Radish podcast and the Man Sprouts podcast. The Weekly Radish is about that sustainable, healthier than yesterday approach. So if you're interested in that, then go along to weeklyradish.com. And if you're particularly interested in the male mental health, what I'm doing with the Man Sprouts podcast at mansprouts.com is focusing on this inability to open up and how we can develop our code, our language, and examples. So you've kind of come along and been one of the victims of my interviews. But a great interview, because it kind of shows the human side of people, in terms of success, etc. Weeklyradish.com or mansprouts.com.
Excellent. Well, we could talk for hours about fruit and veg, Dave, and polish your little radish.
What about me cucumbers and me tomatoes? And
we'll turn the cameras off for the cucumbers. But thanks for coming along. It's
Cheers,
been
mate.
a pleasure.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Hope you've enjoyed that today. And Business Berserkers out. Drop mic.